When Portuguese fans think about Jorge Jesus, they'll remember his one-of-a-kind run with Benfica. Others will think about his groundbreaking move to city rival Sporting, while neutrals like me love him for the countless comedic gems he has dropped throughout the years.
Ai o quê, ó? Vais com pau!
On the other hand, Brazilians, or Flamengo fans to be more specific, will always see Jorge Jesus as that short-lived passion they still haven't truly gotten over. Jorge Jesus' one-year run was one of the greatest managerial tenures in Brazilian football, and today I'm here to tell you all about it. In this video, we'll look into the numerous dramatic moments Jorge Jesus lived in Rio de Janeiro, the reasons behind his tremendous success, and how his brief tenure completely redefined Brazilian football. But first, as usual, let me give you some context. Prior to joining Flamengo, Jorge Jesus' career was perhaps at its lowest point. In the 2000s, Jorge Jesus enjoyed a magnificent rise to the top of Portuguese football, going from being relegated with Moreirense in 2005 to reaching the Portuguese Cup with Belenenses and winning Braga's first international trophy before finally winning the league with Benfica in 2010. From humble beginnings to glorious heights, I don't think there's a better phrase to summarize Jorge Jesus' 2000s decade. Up until 2015, his stock only grew higher. In those 5 years, Jesus conquered 2 other league titles, effectively putting an end to Porto's seemingly never-ending grip on Portuguese football. He also reached 2 Europa League finals, and to cap it all off, Jesus moved to Sporting. Yeah, that sounds, and by all means, it was a completely out-of-pocket move. The fact of the matter is that prior to his departure, Benfica's president actually offered him a less valuable contract and didn't show a great desire to continue counting on his services. Sporting, under madman Bruno de Carvalho, saw Jorge Jesus as the perfect man to break their 13-year league title drought and was willing to pay him very well. While Benfica was trying to push him to the Middle East, Sporting offered him 5 million euros a season. Furthermore, his father Virgulino de Jesus was an important Sporting player in the 1940s and wished to see his son coach his club before he died. Despite all the controversy, Jorge Jesus' tenure got off to a fantastic start. Sporting beat Benfica in the Super Cup, and the Lions will later do the same in the league, this time by a larger margin. The league title Sporting fans so desperately wanted to claim looked guaranteed, such was the difference in quality between the Lions and their 2 biggest rivals. Ultimately, those predictions never came to fruition. Carried by an emerging Renato Sanches and late bloomer Jonas, Benfica spent almost the entire second half of the season without dropping points and eventually caught up to Sporting. But the true season-defining moment that not a single Sporting fan will ever forget was this miss by Brian Ruiz in the last derby of the season. Had that ball gone in, the story could have been vastly different. It didn't, and in the next 2 seasons, Jesus wouldn't be able to make Sporting play nearly as well as he did at the beginning of his tenure. Eventually, it all came crashing down in May 2018 when 40 Sporting Ultras invaded the Alcochete training center and beat up the players, managers, and anyone who stood up against their terrorist behavior. Just as a side note, they did this days before Sporting's Portuguese Cup final clash against the Desportivo das Aves. And no offense to the club, but this was an easily attainable consolation prize that the supporters simply threw away. In the midst of all this chaos, all doors closed on Jesus. Porto was fine with Conceição, Benfica would never take him back after such a cruel betrayal, and Braga was too small for his ambition. At that point, his only option was moving to Saudi Arabia, collecting a fat paycheck and chilling. And trust me, he could have done that, but he didn't want to commit to a larger contract unless he was given the money he claimed he deserved. Well, the Saudis weren't that generous back in 2019, so they fired him for his unwillingness to commit to Al Hilal. But that exit opened up the opportunity for this love story I'm about to tell you. On the 1st of June 2019, Jorge Jesus was appointed Flamengo manager on a 1-year contract. His arrival was met with skepticism by Mengão and Brazilian fans as a whole, who couldn't possibly fathom how an old foreign manager could adapt to the ever-changing landscape of Brazilian football. But Jesus didn't take it personally. He simply mentioned that the coach who completely changed the public's perception of the Portuguese national team was Brazilian, and that football was no place for such a xenophobic mindset. Despite all the criticism, Jorge Jesus kept working in the shadows, and over time, he completely transformed the squad that was undoubtedly already one of the best in South America, but at the same time, clearly lacked the necessary fire to dominate everyone that stood in their way. I remember Gabigol being labeled a flop after his failed tenures at Benfica and Inter, and it was Jesus who gave him back his confidence. Players like William Arão, Bruno Henrique and Arrascaeta became stars under the charismatic Portuguese manager seemingly without explanation. The thing is, Jorge Jesus has a very special temper and communication style that only works with a select group of players. In my view, passionate players like Brazilians tend to usually handle strong criticism better than Portuguese players, who normally prefer a more pedagogical approach from their manager. Countless players throughout Jesus' career were offended by his comments, but Flamengo players and its torcida fell head over heels for his style both on and off the pitch. But it would be on the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of November 2019 that Jesus would live his crowning moment as South America's finest manager. In what had all the ingredients to be a battle for the ages, Flamengo met River Plate in the Libertadores final. Mengão had the goal of winning Libertadores for the first time in 38 years, but their mission got off to an awful start, after Borré gave River the lead just 15 minutes into the match. Flamengo looked nervous, making silly mistake after silly mistake, and River could have easily put the match to rest in the first half. But after the halftime break, probably thanks to the typical Jesus sermon, the players came out energized, with a renewed sense of hope that balanced the match. Still, the equalizer didn't come, and River had a clear chance to win the match once and for all 10 minutes before the final whistle. Things went from bad to worse when Gerson suffered a match-ending injury and had to be replaced by Diego. But the silver lining was that old man Diego brought the energy, or raça as we like to say in the north of Portugal, and didn't allow his teammates to give up. Back and forth, they went until finally, and ironically, in the 88th minute, Gabigol scored the equalizer. You could see the fire in the players, the hope burning brighter than ever, and just 3 minutes later, Gabigol scored again to win it for Mengão. 38 years later, Flamengo was on top of South America once again. All the bad luck, all the heartbreak Jorge had suffered in his career was now vindicated in the most poetic way possible. In 2017, Jorge Jesus faced Real Madrid and was about to seal an improbable win for the Lions until Cristiano Ronaldo equalized in the famous 88th minute, or as Jorge Jesus would say,
88 minutos.
Seconds before the final whistle, Morata won it for Los Merengues. But this wasn't the only heartbreak, no. Jesus lost the league title to Porto in the dying minutes of the match in 2013. That was also the same year he lost the Europa League final to Chelsea, again in stoppage time, as well as making the costly mistake of taking out Cardoso in the Portuguese Cup final and losing it in the last 50 minutes to complete a treble of absolutely nothing. 1 year later, Jesus lost the Europa League final again, this time on penalties, with the ref turning a blind eye to Beto's position in goal. After a remarkable and unlikely rise, Jesus' career spiraled into a constant flow of bad luck that now seemed to have disappeared. He wasn't a joke, nor a hated figure, he was loved by a group of fans larger than the population of many countries. But the party wasn't over yet. Less than 24 hours after this historic conquest, Flamengo were crowned Brazilian champions in the comfort of their homes following Palmeiras' defeat against Grêmio. Flamengo is undeniably huge. I live in the north of Portugal and I see more people wearing Flamengo shirts than ones from Sporting or Boa Vista. But their performances on the pitch weren't living up to their greatness. Similarly to what you see in a club like Man United, Flamengo was constantly missing out on the most important titles, and it was Jesus who changed that once and for all. Until his departure, Jesus would conquer 3 other titles: the Carioca Championship, which is their state championship, Brazil Super Cup, and the Recopa Sul-americano, which is basically the South American equivalent of the UEFA Super Cup. Overall, the Portuguese manager won more trophies than he lost matches. He brought glory back to Brazil's largest fan base and broke old preconceptions about who could really manage in the chaotic Brazilian league. Nonetheless, I still find it kind of ironic that he once said that not in 100 years would you see a Portuguese manager win a Libertadores or the Brasileirão. Well, not everyone can be Bella Goodman, am I right? In reality, it proves specifically to Portuguese managers that the Brasileirão's coaching level was far weaker than what you see in the best European leagues. It's not that Brazilian coaches are less intelligent, it's just that their own philosophy of closing Brazilian football to foreigners prevented their coaches from developing. And since barely any Brazilian coach stood out on their own, they never spent enough time in Europe to learn and bring that knowledge back to impact their country. Jorge Jesus opened the doors to foreign minds that could influence the league and help it reach much greater heights. While his exit wasn't really a fairy tale ending since he basically dropped Flamengo in the middle of 2020, as soon as his ex-Benfica came calling for him, Jesus' career is much better now than what it was 10 years ago. His second run with Benfica was by all means a massive flop, according to him, it wasn't his fault.
Eu vim para o Benfica para poder trabalhar normalmente com os meus jogadores e fui impedido por alguém? Não, por uma pandemia.
His subsequent tenures in Turkey and Saudi Arabia have been positive at worst and fantastic at best, considering that Jesus won basically every domestic title in Saudi Arabia. Ultimately, everyone won with Jesus' run at Flamengo. Mengão became great again, the Brazilian league improved its tactical level, and foreign coaches found an explored market where they could showcase their worth. To this day, many fans still miss Jesus, just like I still miss Fosh Kids in my local supermarkets. But at the end of the day, we need to accept that the past must stay in the past. There was no way Jesus could outdo or even match what he achieved with Flamengo in 2019. So the best thing both he and Flamengo fans can do is look back fondly on the memories they created together. Not sure why, but this is starting to sound more and more like a tutorial on how to get over your ex and less like a football video, so I think I'll stop here. Anyways, thank you so much for sticking with me and watching till the end. If you're a Portuguese viewer, you might want to check out this video I made about arguably the strongest Portuguese side of the 21st century. And if you're watching from Brazil, then you might want to watch my essay on why the Brasileirão is one of the most must-see leagues in the world right now. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you in one of those videos.